Walang kain talaga. Buko lang kinain namin sa yung mga patay na baboy. Kinakatay na lang namin. Gutom na, pati mga bata namin.
Nagsikap kami. Pero ngayon, yung pinaghirapan namin, nawala talaga. Wala na kaming uuwian.
Wala kaming damit. Ito, mga 3 araw na sa katawan ko, wala pa kaming isan. Wala kaming mga banig, lahat ng mga gamit namin, wala na.
Nahirapan kasi kami kasi walang tulong na dumating sa amin. Walang tubig, walang signal. Hindi kami makapanghingi ng tulong sa aming mga kamag-anak.
Sana naman, sa panahon ngayon, yung mga politiko dyan, yung mga namamahala sa ating bansa, sana maawa naman sila sa amin.
Good evening, I'm Gretchen Hall.
I'm Robbie Alampa. You're watching The Big Story. It's been days since Typhoon Odette struck several parts of Visayas and Mindanao, and up to now, we have yet to fully grasp the extent of the damage it brought.
Social media alone has been replete with tales and visuals of the destruction. Some areas like Surigao del Norte and the Dinagat Islands have been leveled to the ground. And Jem Abansenya has the big story.
More than 1,000 people, mostly women and children, sought refuge in this once world-class sports and tourism complex in Siargao on Thursday. But it was no match for Typhoon Odette's strong winds and torrential rains. The typhoon ripped open the stadium, as captured by Kirby Abihoran in this video. Fortunately, according to Kirby, no one was hurt in the incident. Some people made use of the tables as shields to cover themselves. The sender of this video, Francis Vargas, said they were there until 4 p.m. In the end, the recently inaugurated 630 million complex has turned into rubbles. The entire province of Surigao del Norte, in fact, was almost unrecognizable. The News 5 team tried to visit it again 2 days after Typhoon Odette's onslaught. Travel was not easy due to landslides and toppled trees. When we reached Surigao City, electric poles were toppled and communication lines were down. All buildings were heavily damaged, if not totally destroyed. We also saw some residents at the side of the road now homeless.
Katugod siya, grabe.
Grabe talaga yung bagyong yun. Umuslat ang bahay, sira. Nagliparan yung mga bubong kaya dito kami sa baluster ng kalsada nagtago.
Para lang may maigo.
Airport operations are still suspended since the runway is full of debris. The port of Lipata is closed also because of debris brought by the typhoon.
This is under investigation sa engineering kung safe pa ba itong gamitin sa mga biyahero o sa barko. Kasi pag hindi safe, ito ay i-close muna namin for renovation or rehabilitation.
This group of fishermen came all the way from the Dinagat Islands just to seek aid. The island was also ravaged by Odette and food there is already scarce.
Walang kain talaga. Buko lang kinain namin sa yung mga patay na baboy. Kinakatay na lang namin. Gutom na, pati mga bata namin. Walang makain talaga.
Residents are resorting to a local spring water source to take a bath and to wash their clothes. But despite the situation, the unwavering spirit of the people of Surigao still shines through.
Ganyan talaga mga Pinoy, kahit anong sitwasyon ang dumating, kahit anong trahedya ang dumating, masaya lang.
For News 5, Jem Avancenia, we are One News.
Being one of the heavily battered areas by Typhoon Odette, residents of Surigao Province are calling for assistance. To give us an update on the situation, there we have on the line Mr. Abel de Guzman, Surigao del Sur PDRRMC officer. Mr. de Guzman, welcome to The Big Story.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. Welcome to The Big Story.
Apo. Let's start po with the situation. Kamusta po dyan sa probinsya nyo?
As of today, medyo okay na yung panahon at medyo nakabalik na yung mga tao from the evacuation.
Apa. And ano po mga pangangailangan ngayon dyan? I mean, obviously, maraming pangangailangan from shelter to clothes to food to water. Ano-ano pa po ang kailangan? And is there any particular thing that you would say is the priority?
Sa ngayon po is ang pangangailangan ng mga tao dito is pagkain, pero this has been addressed by the local government units concerned because Surigao del Sur, compared to the other provinces, hindi naman masyadong grabe yung impact of Typhoon Odette.
Opo. And siyempre, nakakausap po namin kayo, but what does that say about the electricity and telecommunications in your area?
Yes, after the onslaught of Typhoon Odette, electrical posts were toppled down and communication facilities were talagang sira siya. Sa ngayon, there are still LGUs, siguro more than 10, which has no electricity for the time being totally blacked out, and communication line here is hindi talaga medyo may paghihirap kung may panahon na may tatawag.
May nakikita rin po kami mga tumbang mga puno, tumbang mga poste, putikan sa kung saan-saan papunta. Are there areas na hindi pa po naaabot and where there are still a lot of unaccounted for, whether it's people or damages?
Sa ngayon po, all roads are passable from the national to the provincial and even to the municipal. Then as of this time, we have consolidated reports that there were around 40 number of houses totally damaged and around 1,080 houses were partially damaged. But of course, the number are still increasing.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Mr. Abel de Guzman. With communication lines still being fixed in Visayas and Mindanao, government agencies are having difficulties in accounting for the total number of casualties and damage brought by Typhoon Odette. In the NDRRMC's latest report, casualties now total 58, 9 of which are confirmed. The rest are still undergoing validation. However, based on the report of the Philippine National Police, at least 208 people have already died due to Typhoon Odette. 52, meanwhile, are still missing, while 239 were reported injured. In Bohol alone, the provincial government has already tallied about 94 deaths. According to Bohol Governor Art Yap, around 18 Boholanos are still missing, 96 have been injured. What is certain, though, is that Odette left heavy damage across Visayas and Mindanao. The NDRRMC notes that around 343 million pesos worth of damage to infrastructure and agriculture were recorded. The Social Welfare Department, meanwhile, estimates that around 1.8 million Filipinos have been affected by the calamity.
These are the other big stories tonight. Still on Typhoon Odette, with a number of airports reporting severe damages, thousands of passengers had their flights canceled. Commercial flights to Siargao might be halted for the next 2 months. A returning Filipino from Qatar is the country's third case of the OMICRON variant. The World Health Organization warns that OMICRON could surpass Delta as the dominant variant in the country. And the leader of the Catholic Church just offered his prayers for the Philippines. Pope Francis hopes that Santo Niño will console those affected by Typhoon Odette. These big stories after the break.
morning. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. The effects of Typhoon Odette could be clearly seen in Bohol as at least 94 individuals were killed by the typhoon.
Residents and local governments in the province, meanwhile, continue to ask for help. Let's get an update from Jenny Dongon. She is reporting live from Panglao, Bohol. Jenny, what's the situation there?
Robbie, Bohol authorities have confirmed at least 94 deaths and 18 missing. This number, however, may still increase as they continue to assess other areas in the province.
One of the most powerful typhoons on record. This is how Boholanos describe Typhoon Odette. According to the Bohol PD-RMO, 43 out of 48 towns were heavily affected by the typhoon. Over in the town of Ubay, 100% of the houses were damaged, 80% of which were totally destroyed. One of the houses, which was completely destroyed, belonged to Aling Lolita, who immediately asked for help. She says that she and her family have been waiting for help for the past 3 days.
Ang hirap namin, wala kaming mabihisan. Wala kaming damit. Ito, mga 3 araw na sa katawan ko, wala pa kaming mabihisan. Wala kaming mga banig, lahat ng mga gamit namin, wala na.
Paano yung umulan? Saan kayo tutuloy?
Tatrapala lang siguro. Sana maawa lang ang Panginoon, di mo na sana umulan.
Another resident, Aling Connie, meanwhile suffered various wounds during the onslaught. They weren't able to evacuate immediately and instead went to the roof to evade the storm surge.
Sabi ko, Lord, huwag mo naman sana akong kunin kasi hindi ko pa kaya. Hindi ko pa nagampanan lahat ng tungkulin ko bilang isang ina.
The onslaught of Typhoon Odette toppled trees and electric posts while also overturning several vehicles. Still, Governor Arthur Yap insists they prepared for Odette's onslaught but admitted that they did not expect its strength.
Hindi natin na-anticipate kasi nag-umpisa to, bagyo, normal na bagyo. So, nung palapit ng palapit, doon lang natin nakita na nagiging super typhoon siya.
According to Yap, it took 3 days before the provincial government was able to contact some of the mayors.
So sinabi ko sa mga mayors, kung hindi natin gagawin yung assignment natin, hindi natin masasubmit yung rapid damage assessment report, then hindi tayo makaka-access ng pondo sa gobyerno. At kailangan natin itong i-rush. No? Yun ang nirarush namin ngayon na malaman natin kung ilan talagang namatay, ilan ang nawalan ng shelter. So yun sana pwede natin umpisahan ngayon.
Robbie, residents and local authorities are continued to plead for help as many are still in need of food, medicine, water, and clothes. President Duterte, meanwhile, has vowed to provide 2 billion pesos for the rehabilitation of the province. Robbie.
Still due to the aftermath of Typhoon Odette, many flights are canceled this week. From December 21 to 24, Cebu Pacific flights to and from Cebu have been halted, and that includes destinations such as Manila, Davao, Caticlan, Tacloban, and Osamis. Cebu Pacific says 25,000 passengers in total have been affected by flight cancellations. Philippine Airlines estimates theirs to be at 20,000 passengers. As for Air Asia, they estimate that some 35,000 passengers have been affected. The Civil Aviation Authority says that commercial flights are not allowed for the meantime in Surigao and Davao. Cebu Pacific estimates that it will take until the end of February before flights to Siargao can resume.
A third case of the OMICRON variant has been detected in the Philippines. The World Health Organization is warning that it might overtake Delta as the dominant variant in the country. Jen Calimon with this report.
Less than a week after the country reported its first 2 index cases of the Omicron variant, the Philippines has just detected its third Omicron case. The patient is an unvaccinated 36-year-old returning overseas Filipino from Qatar. He arrived on November 28 and underwent facility-based quarantine. He tested positive on December 5. His December 19 test already came out negative.
The case completed his isolation in Cebu before traveling back to Cavite, his hometown. The case is currently finishing his home quarantine in Cavite to be asymptomatic since his arrival.
The ROF had 3 close contacts from his trip. All are now under home isolation with negative test results. So far, there are only 3 known cases of Omicron in the country, with Delta still being the most dominant variant around. However, the World Health Organization projects Omicron to surpass Delta as the dominant variant. Former NTF Special Advisor Dr. Tony Liachon is seeing the same projection.
Ang problema naman, sila po ay highly transmissible kahit mild ang symptoms. So, ang ibig sabihin, pwede pa rin nilang matangay po yung infection at madala nila sa area na unvaccinated. So, magkakaroon po talaga ng rapid transmissibility.
To prevent this, the government is now ramping up vaccination, but that just hit a roadblock. With the onslaught of Typhoon Odette, more than 600 local governments from hardly hit areas have suspended their vaccine drives. Some vaccine vials were also damaged due to power interruptions.
Unfortunately, as of December 19, 100 vials of Pfizer vaccines in Region 6, Bingawan, Iloilo Province, was reported to be wasted. The National Vaccine Operations Cluster shall replenish stocks of Region 6.
The National Vaccine Operations Center has advised vaccination sites to monitor the temperature of storage units to maintain the shelf life of vaccine vials. Reporting for News 5, Jen Calimon, We Are One News.
It is 5 days before Christmas, and several organizations are spreading the holiday kindness to the affected families of Typhoon Odette. The Metro Pacific Investments Corporation donated to the Alagang Kapatid Foundation and Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation for the response operations. The firm also distributed relief items, including blankets and towels, to the residents of Del Carmen, Siargao, with the help of the Philippine Air Force. Employee volunteers of One Meralco Foundation, meanwhile, readied packages filled with goods for Odette-hit areas. And today, many of our kababayans in the provinces hit by Typhoon Odette have no food and water. They have lost their homes and some have lost loved ones. Let's make them feel the spirit of Filipino bayanihan. You can give to them through the account details flashed on your screen. Let's make them feel that through this pandemic, through this devastation, tuloy pa rin po ang Pasko. Time for another quick break. When we return, is it going to be a dark and lonely Christmas for some of our kababayans? Power and communication lines have yet to be restored in some Odette-hit areas. The Weather Bureau is now keeping an eye on another low-pressure area expected to enter the Philippines by Saturday. And Pope Francis expressed his closeness to Filipinos heavily battered by Typhoon Odette. He prays for consolation and hope to those affected. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. The national government has vowed to allot 2 billion pesos for the typhoon-battered provinces.
This as the president says that pandemic response has depleted funding for calamities. Gerard De La Peña with the story.
Uprooted trees, wrecked roofs and walls, debris everywhere. These were the sites that greeted President Duterte when he visited several typhoon-hit areas in the Visayas and Mindanao during the weekend. Although the extent of damage has yet to be fully assessed, the President has already ordered that 2 billion pesos be allotted for recovery efforts. He, however, said that pandemic response depleted the funds.
Walay limit niya tako kay kung utang sa mga hotel nga mahalon o baratohon. Kay ang mga OFW nato pag uli di manday nato sila paggawason sa quarantine.
Duterte appointed Social Welfare Secretary Rolando Bautista as crisis manager of hard-hit areas like Surigao del Norte and Dinagat Islands. Concerned agencies were tasked to provide shelter assistance and to immediately restore electricity.
We are working double time, Mayor, Mala Pangulo, to restore energy here in the province of Cebu. Ang problema, daghan kaayo na poste, ginagawa nato na paraan.
The Department of Agriculture has also allotted 445 million pesos to assist farmers and fisher folks. But Duterte said the priority right now is to provide basic needs to affected families such as food and water. Over the weekend, presidential aspirants set aside their campaigning to extend help to devastated provinces. Since Friday, Vice President Leni Robredo and her team reached out to Surigao, Bohol, Dinagat, and Siargao. The unit team of Bongbong Marcos and Mayor Sara Duterte, on the other hand, shelled out 3 million pesos for food packs and humanitarian missions. Senator Manny Pacquiao, meanwhile, airlifted more than 30 tons of relief goods for Cebu and other affected provinces. As for Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, he and the Manila City Council passed a resolution allotting 2.5 million pesos in assistance for badly hit areas. Senator Panfilo Lacson, meanwhile, said that they continue to help out those affected by Odette, slamming, however, what he calls calamity politics. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, We Are One News.
And 2 days after the Typhoon Odette left the Philippines, some telecommunications companies say they have reconnected more areas in the Visayas and Mindanao. In a statement, Smart and PLDT said that the majority of their wireless services have been restored in parts of Visayas, save for Cebu, Bohol, Leyte, and Negros. In Mindanao, major restoration activities are still ongoing in parts of Surigao del Norte. Globe, for its part, has set up 19 stations for free calls and free charging stations across Visayas and Mindanao. The National Grid Corporation of the Philippines has announced that power in several parts of the Visayas has been restored through an alternative power restoration scheme. That would include SAMAR, Cebu, Leyte. The activity only covers transmission services, not distribution services or generating capacity. They add that they are still assessing the extent of damage in other parts of Leyte, Negros, and Bohol. The corporation is targeting restoration for Agusan today and for Surigao by December 25. For other affected areas, the NGCP says they will release an updated restoration schedule once damage assessment is completed.
Just after Odette ravaged Philippine provinces, State Weather Bureau Pag-asa monitors yet another low-pressure area. The LPA was last located at 2,300 kilometers east of Mindanao. It is forecast to enter the Philippine area of responsibility by Saturday, December 25th. It is still uncertain, though, if the LPA will develop into a tropical depression once it enters the country.
And as millions of Filipinos try to recover from the onslaught of Typhoon Odette, several groups and individuals have already offered their help and prayers to those in need.
Joining the call is Pope Francis, who asked for prayers and assistance for victims of...
After praying the Angelus in St. Peter's Square, Pope Francis expressed his closeness to Filipinos suffering from the devastation wrought by Typhoon Odette. The Pope likewise expressed hope that the Santo Niño will bring consolation and hope to the families most in need. The Catholic Church has already set December 25 and December 26 as National Days of Prayers for families affected by Odette. The CBCP is calling on dioceses to dedicate the said days to pray for the recovery of communities affected by the typhoon. Dioceses are also encouraged to hold a second collection in all masses for typhoon victims. And it's 5 days to go before Christmas. Pero subukan natin tuloy pa rin ang Pasko, mga kapatid. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe. Philippines, akala po ni Gretchen Ho. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. We are One News. Good evening.